may be that I appreciate members participating in the meeting need to be seen. If I do for bandwidth reasons, need to knock my picture off every now and again. Is that okay?
Of course, no problem at all with that.
I think it's more when we
Okay,
need to vote that you can be seen.
Sure.
So
Okay,
anytime we need to vote, if you can put your camera on, but you can switch it off otherwise.
Right, okay.
So welcome to the Swansea Public Service Board Joint Committee, and I'm going to hand over to Alison for the first item.
Yeah, thank you. The first item on the agenda today is the election of chair for the municipal year 2022-23. Do I have any nominations, please?
I don't know if I can nominate, but if I can I nominate Andrea Lewis, please?
Yeah, and do we have any other nominations? No? Can we all vote?
Second.
Yeah, seconded by Roger Thomas. So can we all vote for Andrea Lewis as chair, please? You can raise your hands or your virtual hands.
Okay.
Carried. I'll pass over to Councillor Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. So again, warm welcome to everybody. No pun intended on this warm summer's afternoon in Swansea. Welcome to the Public Service Board Joint Committee. So moving on then to agenda item 2. Can I have any nominations for the election of Vice Chair for the municipal year 2022-2023?
Can I nominate Roger Thomas, please?
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? I'm happy to second. Any other nominations? Okay, so all those in favour of Roger Thomas as the Vice Chair? Thank you very much, and congratulations, Roger, and nice to have the team back together again for another year. So on to item 3, welcome and apologies for absence. So we've covered the welcome part. Alison, do we have any apologies, please?
Yeah, I've got apologies from Chris Jones from Welsh Government. We haven't got a Fire Authority councillor rep with us today because their AGM is until the 4th of July, so we'll be having nominations after that period. And also Keith Reid from Public Health isn't able to be with us today, but we have got his representative, Jennifer Davis, has joined us today.
Great, welcome Jennifer. And Sian?
Yeah, sorry, I think just for accuracy, so Keith and Jennifer, they are members, they're employees of Swansea Bay of the Health Board, they're not here on behalf of Public Health Wales. I think it's just important. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that, Sian.
Or Jennifer is here.
Great, thank you. Okay, so on to item 4, any disclosures of personal or prejudicial interest? I can't see anybody indicating. Item 5 is the minutes of the previous meeting. I won't go through them page by page, but I had anybody indicate to me that they're not accurate. But if anybody does want to query anything, please feel free to do so now.
Just, sorry, Andrea, one from me. It makes reference at the top. It's Mid West Wales Fire and Rescue Authority, the full title, actually. It's the 3rd box down, says vacancy, and the statutory members.
Great, thank you, Roger. We'll amend accordingly. So everybody's happy, apart from that minor amendment. Can't see anyone indicating. So we'll move on then to item 6, which is an update on the actions from the previous meeting. There are none. Oh, sorry, Adam, do you want to come in on this one?
Yeah, no, you're quite right, Andrea. There aren't any, but I did want to take a liberty, if I could, just to update on the back of those, the actions and the information that's in there. Just with regard to the annual report, it's in the final stages now, will be distributed for final check-in and sign-off in the next few weeks. So just be grateful for a prompt response from all statutory members. You'll be receiving that. It's the information you put in. Just make sure it's accurate and ready to be signed off. And then if you could sign it off and return back to Leanne, because we're on a really tight time frame because of getting it translated and then published by the end of July. So as soon as you get it, if you could look at it and turn it around, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam, and I'm sure members will take that advice on board. And sorry, at this point, I will also say, for the benefit of the recording, that I will be leaving the chair at 4 o'clock and handing over to my vice chair, Roger, who's kindly offered to take that on at 4. So without further ado, we've got quite a busy agenda. Do we have, we've got public question time. Do we have any questions from the public, Alison?
No public questions received today.
Okay, thank you. So item 8, terms of reference, and I'll hand over to you, Adam, for this item.
That's great, thank you. Just really in line with good governance and good practice, at the start of a new year, we should just take the time to look at our terms of reference, make sure it's still fit for purpose, make sure it's still got the objectives and the aims that we want to cover. We've been through it, had a look. We don't feel that there are any amendments or changes that are needed at the current time. So recommend it to the committee for approval to maintain, but happy if anyone has anything they wish to change, but if not, I'd recommend it for approval.
Can Roger come in, please?
Of course, Roger.
Yeah, it's just in terms of some of the references, sometimes it says statutory partners, sometimes it says statutory members. It's a minor point. Also then on page 8, the statutory members of the board, I think the actual legislation says partners, but like I say, it says Minna West Wales Fire and Rescue Service. It's actually the authority. And the same under section 9 then on page 8, Minna West Wales Fire and Rescue Authority as well. So repeated, yeah, just those 3 minor corrections from me. Thanks.
Thank you, Roger. And as a former Fire Authority member, I certainly understand the distinction between the two. So thank you for flagging that up. And I'm sure those terms of reference will be amended accordingly. Anyone else, anything to raise on item 8? No, I can't see anybody indicating. So welcome, Steve Wilson. Hopefully I can't see Steve on my screen, but I'm hopeful that Steve is with us.
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm here.
Sorry,
Yep.
Steve, I could see you in the top corner. You were hiding on my screen there. So a very warm welcome to you. Steve is from Wastewater and is going to take us through a presentation on drainage and wastewater management plan for the next 25 years. So over to you, Steve.
Thanks. Can I just check, was the presentation sent through to you in advance, or do you want me to share it from my screen here?
No, I haven't had it, Steve. So if you could share it, that would be great, please.
Certainly. Okay, I will do that now. Okay, let's see if I can get that to. Okay, right. Has that come up now? Have you got?
Yes, we could see that.
Great. So thank you for that. So this is, I've only got 4 slides. I'll keep it very, very brief. We're embarking on the first of our drainage and wastewater management plans. This is a new requirement on water companies across England and Wales to start to think about drainage planning in the same way that for many, many years we've thought about water resource management planning. So for a number of years, water companies have thought about water resources, looked at growth, looked at climate change, looked at the environment in terms of where we take water out of the environment, and made plans, long-term plans out over sort of 25 to 50 years for how we can keep everybody in supply of water. But on the wastewater side, there's been nothing of that kind of equivalence. The history of our drainage networks is fragmented and is still pretty fragmented. Water companies have sewers. The local authorities still have the responsibility for culverts and certain water courses. Surface water pipes are in a mixture of ownership. and you've got Natural Resources Wales with responsibilities for main river flooding, etc. And that history of where the drainage network has come from, how it's been built up over time, has served some useful purpose to now. But when we think about climate change, when we think about growth, when we think about the environmental challenges that we've got around river water quality, then we're really testing that existing infrastructure. So we're starting to build plans out for 50 years now to sort of say, what's the long-term plan here to put drainage planning on the required kind of footing. So this first plan that we're producing, we're about to start a consultation phase. So we've been working away in a bit of a box, a bit of a silo, coming up with a plan that tries to balance the risks of flooding, tries to balance the risks of water quality. So thinking like the dreaded storm overflow that's in the press a lot. How do we manage those kind of things? How do we cope with new growth, but how do we also improve the quality of our rivers? We've been working on that, and we're about to start this consultation phase, which kicks off in the beginning of July, will run for around 10 weeks. And one of the major bodies that we want to consult with are local authorities, because clearly the local planning authority, local authorities have a big part to play in this. And if we are going to try and put drainage planning onto a long-term footing, well, actually, we need to make sure that we're covering the needs of local authorities in that, and also we're starting to work about how we map one set of assets, and we start to come up with our planning in working together in combination. And a great example of that is when you think about how Swansea's improved the city centre. I live in Pontedilais. I'm in Swansea a lot. The stretch of road now from the railway station down into town is incredibly improved. It's really pretty now. We've got all those kind of planters and trees. The curbs have all been improved, and the kind of cityscape has been vastly improved. But all those planters that have been put in, all those trees that have been planted, the curb line and the design actually takes the surface water away from them. And in fact, we're now collecting more surface water in the middle of Swansea than we were before that work was started. And that surface water is the biggest challenge that we've got to handle going forward with climate change, with more intense rainfall events, and the fact that these dreaded storm overflows are operating far more frequently than we would like. Now, thankfully, actually, we've been talking to various officers in Swansea Council, and the next set of improvements around the Kingsway down towards the new arena, we are actually starting to work together to make sure that we're doing this in a more sustainable way, and we're trying to take surface water out, because the big challenge for Wales over the next 10-20 years is getting surface water out of the sewer network. It is the only way that we're going to be able to get storm overflows down. It is the only way that we're going to be able to cope with climate change. And I think this graph on the left-hand side kind of brings this to as a really good kind of example. The bottom bit in the blue area there, that's kind of normal dry weather. That's when the sewers should be holding all the flow in the sewer network. The green section there is when we've got rainfall, and that's what we call our drainage plan. That's when we've got to start to manage the surface water, and in Wales, typically we've got 125 rainy days that we've got to cope with in Wales. And then that top bit in the pink, that's the kind of emergency plan. That's when we're into those real big named storm events, when we're starting to overload the capacity of our networks, and we're into emergency response and that's increasing as well. You know, typically we used to see rainfall events in Wales over the last sort of few, you know, previous 10 years. We might get, you know, 1 to 3 rainfall events over a 1 in 50 year return, a kind of named storm type thing. We're heading for 4 or 5, and climate change modelling is telling us we're heading for 6 or 7 by 2050. So we've got to increasingly make this sewer network operate in those 3 different boxes, and planning to do that without spending millions and millions of pounds digging up every street to put bigger pipes in, or to put separate pipes in to take that rainwater away from the foul sewage, means we're going to have to work much more closely with local authorities to plan for how we can put more sustainable urban drainage in, more green infrastructure, more places for that water to be soaked away and held in the network. That's what will help us reduce our sewer flooding. That's what will help reduce, you know, the number of times in which, you know, we're both out there putting sandbags out, calling the fire service out to pump out people's cellars and homes. That's the way in which we're going to try and build this drainage network and put it on an even keel. So the consultation phase is about to kick off. We're really interested in comments. We want to work particularly with informed stakeholders, Natural Resources Wales, local government, to try and make sure that our plan is tackling those kind of priorities, but also we're doing it in an affordable way, because all of this has to be paid for out of the water bill. We're all suffering from a kind of cost of living crisis at this moment in time, and one of the only bills, thankfully, at the moment, which is not you know, racing away from us, is the water bill. But there's a huge amount of work that we need to do to try and get that sewer network climate change ready, and to adapt our services to be able to cope with that. And so we've got to agree that on a way which is affordable for customers. To try and bring that to life for you, storm overflows, you know, these kind of relief points when we collect the rainwater and we have to discharge out to the river or to the sea. Wales has got 2,300 storm overflows. Thames Water's area has got about 460 of those storm overflows. They've got 15 million customers, and we estimate that they'll have to put their average water bill up from about £400 to about £660 if they're going to remove storm overflows from the sewer network in London and the Thames Water area. We've 2,300 storm overflows. We've got 1.3 million bill-paying customers. If we were to remove storm overflows in Wales, it would cost £11,500 on top of a £400 bill per customer to make this happen. So it's clearly unaffordable to remove storm overflows. But what we've got to try and do is come up with a way which we are reducing harm to the environment, we are preventing flooding from homes, but we're doing this in an affordable and manageable way. And this plan is about how we set that out for the long term. So at that point, I just sort of want to bring it to a close. We're really interested to hear your comments around that, and if you've got any kind of questions about the kind of service, etc., that we are providing, please let me know. I will send these slides through to you so you've got them for the record to circulate. Apologies they didn't get to you in advance. I'll try and find out what happened. But thanks for listening. Any questions?
Thank you, Steve. Does anybody have any questions for Steve? Well, appreciate you flagging up the consultation, and I'm sure we'll be able to you know, share that among stakeholders of the PSB to contribute to that. So thank you, Steve, for the presentation. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you wish. But thank you very much. So I'll take us on then to item 10, which is Summer of Fun. And we've got Mark Gosney. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis, and hope everybody is well. And thank you very much for inviting me to talk today. I also have a presentation which I'm going to share now. Just to give you a little bit of sort of background and overview of Summer of Fun. Is that?
Yes, we can see that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so Winter Wellbeing and Summer of Fun. The background is Summer of Fun started last year. It was a Welsh government funded programme back in last summer. It was meant to be sort of a one and done programme, and it was obviously in connection with COVID and trying to get children and young people back out socialising, you know, trying to build up some of the elements that they've lost maybe over the last 2 years in terms of communication skills, you know, being more active, looking at well-being. So the Welsh Government released £5 million worth of funding nationally, which is broken down to each local authority. We received this quite late. Well, it was kind of reactive, really, I think, at the time, which everything was, to be fair. So we received this in Swansea, and our plan of attack was to allocate that via an application process to people who wanted to deliver projects. So we sent out the application through various networks, including our internal networks and you know, various other networks in terms of to third sector, to the private sector, etc. And we had approximately well, just over 100 projects sent in applications, of which we funded 83. We had just over £750,000 worth of funding requested, which we were able to facilitate £400,000 worth of funding through the budget that was set to us by Welsh Government. There's approximately 10,000 individual attendances at different activities that were run through the Summer of Fun in Swansea last year, and they included some internal projects through social care, early help hubs, etc., and also you know, external projects as well, third sector, as well as some private sector, and sports clubs, and also schools applied as well. So that was Summer of Fun, and we progressed then on to it went really well in Swansea, Summer of Fun. So we were kind of asking Welsh Government, is this going to continue? Are we able to get more funding for the other holiday holiday times throughout the year? And again, in September, Welsh Government said, yes, we've released another set of funding for winter wellbeing. So we followed the same route in terms of how we allocated that. So again, we had a panel made up of local authority members as well as third sector partners, and we allocated that. At the same time, we were working with the Life Stages and Partnership team, and we also developed, run alongside that, the winter wellbeing for 50 plus, because obviously COVID has hit all aspects of our community, you know, over the last 2 years. So we wanted to look at the different ways. The model worked extremely well for children and young people, so why not work with our 50 plus members as well? So we developed that at the same time. So a few stats from the winter wellbeing funding. We funded 93 projects. We allocated over £500,000 worth of funding, and again we had about £700,000 or £800,000 worth of requests. We sent out a questionnaire, and of the 93 projects, 53 responded, which showed that there was attendances in those 53 projects of 8,200 individuals. So if we average that out, it's roughly 155 people per project. So what we would estimate there, if all projects returned their evaluation, then there would have been over 1,400 individual attendances at different sessions. And again, You know, there were lots of different really interesting projects delivered through it. You know, environmental projects, educational projects, and sporting. You know, there's 35 clubs were supported in total. So that was the CYP, or Children and People Winter Wellbeing, and the stats are quite similar for the 50 plus program as well. So we funded 50 projects, over £400,000 worth of funding, and again that was COVID carers recovery fund, I think, that we funded that through. And from the 50 projects that we funded, 40 responded to our evaluation, which was, you know, just over 7,700 attendances at those 40. So the average slightly higher, 192 on average per project. So if you scaled that up to the 50, it's, you know, 9,600 attendances. So, you know, again, sort of provision that we looked at there. There was some club-based activities. There was sport and physical activity, well-being, as well as activity-based and support and creative arts as well. So, in terms of evaluation for the Summer of Fun, Welsh Government sent out a link, and they handled the data in terms of the attendances and, you know, how many projects run, etc. And so they were able to do that. We can access the reports, but they ran that for Winter Wellbeing, 50 plus. We did that in Swansea, and that's actually being reported against by the Live Well Age objective for the PSB. And, you know, we collated that ourselves. So that was really good. In terms of the actual evaluation of the activities, we did quality assurance visits. So we went out to as many as we could, you know, to kind of see if they were running as planned, and sort of see it firsthand in terms of, you know, exactly what was running. Now, I've had a little bit of technical issue today in terms of running this, but this, as a part of the evaluation, because Welsh Government said it was 1 year and that was it, we, certain areas in the national meetings, I would say that maybe didn't run quite as well as it did in Swansea. So we've been campaigning Welsh Government to see if we continue this funding. And the only way you can do that is by proving impact, evidencing how much this means to actual people. So I can give you stats, etc. But we commissioned a company to go out and do a video evaluation. So there's two versions of the video evaluation. One is 15 minutes long, and I know you guys are very busy people, so you haven't got 15 minutes to watch it. So, and there's a 1 minute version. So I got the 1 minute version here. It gives you a little bit of a snapshot. So I'm hoping it'll work. If you've got time, please look at the 15-minute, because that really drills down to the essence of the program. So I'd like to try and play this if I can. Is that playing?
40 to 60
and can you hear it?
this week, and that's massive. So having the provision of free activities helps me financially. It helps keep structure and physical activities within the holidays.
So it's been great to meet people that we've never met before, great to support families and that we've never seen in our venue before.
The Winter of Wellbeing Fund has allowed us to run courses for people who may not have normally had the opportunity to do something like this.
We get to get exercise and learn new things.
Got to meet people, do things I wouldn't normally be able to do, feel less anxious.
Without the funding, we would not have been able to do this as an organisation.
Wedi dod fan hyn heddiw I cael hwyl.
It's good to come here because I can meet up with people.
Swansea Storm are going to set up a basketball tournament for all young people with special needs. It's amazing.
Thank you. So, I mean, again, talking to, the lived experience is so important for all of our work. So talking to the actual children and people that attended, the families that benefited, and the projects as well, was really important for us to get that message across. And it's made a massive difference to a lot of people. And also you can see there, you know, the targeted communities in need that were involved as well. But one, I guess, unintended outcome from it is how much the projects felt supported. And obviously it's been a tough 2 years for projects and things like that. So they were welcoming of the additional funding, of the opportunity to really reach new people as well. So next steps. So we were told in the national meeting not so long ago that there was going to be an additional amount of money for Summer Fund 2022. That was 7 million nationally, and we've been busily coordinating Swansea's response to that. And we were actually told in that meeting that one of the main reasons why they've approved that is the sort of campaigning from Swansea and the fact that we were able to show how impactful that funding was, and that's gone to decision makers, etc. So we've had that funding through, so we are in the process of the panel and allocating and approving that funding for the CYP programme. We've also applied for COVID recovery fund money in order to put on a Summer Fund 50+ as well with our Life Stages team. So we're just waiting to hear the outcome of that. So my ask for PSB and partners around the table and wider really is, you know, how can we develop this into an annual programme which includes all partners? You know, it's been very successful, but how do we continue it going for, you know, in the future? And how can we make this everybody's business? Because, you know, it mentioned there about poverty. When we talk about poverty, yes, you know, the cost of living, etc., and heating and eating is paramount to that. But also, I do believe that as a citizens, poverty can be poverty of opportunity as well. So it's how can we all join in the community and activities around us, and that enriches us as individuals. And things like this I see as essential programs and really key in order to enable people to get involved in those activities. So that was my last question. So I shall finish that, and
thank you, Mark.
thank you for your time.
So any comments, suggestions? Adam?
Great, thanks. Yeah, really good. Thanks for the presentation, Mark. As always, it's really good to see what's happening. I think for me that the big link here is through the Live Well, Age Well work stream that we've got. I think, you know, that's already supported by all partners across, and I know you already link in with Jane Whitmore generally on your programs anyway. But I think that's the key link for me. Is on that work stream, and to maybe look at the priorities that we've got through that work stream with Jane and see how we can identify which partners are best placed in order to support that, either through resource promotion or finance. But I think if we steer it through there, that picks up things like the Children's Right Network. It picks up sort of those early years objectives. So I think if we focus on that, so linking with Jane and maybe come back through that work stream in terms of what is there something different that you'd want to deliver on the back of that, and how can the PSB support that through that work stream?
Thank you, Adam. Sean?
Yeah, I completely agree. Thanks, Mark. It sounded great, actually, and it was a really good presentation and a little video as well. So I completely agree with Adam. I think that's probably the best route, because my question was going to be, and I don't know, I mean, I'd have to be very careful about offering up services that I don't know if we can deliver, but it did feel to me like, was this an opportunity to get into some of the groups in a less formal setting to understand, you know, for example, you know, were there particular health needs? Where were we with some of the vaccinations and immunisations and some of that, you know, stuff that I was thinking about with some of the young people particularly, but also potentially with the over 50s, with you know, something, and getting some of those healthy messages across to them without turning it from a summer of fun into, you know, being a bit more formal. But I think actually, I think there may be a way that we can link in through that and give another opportunity. But I think actually Adam is right. Doing it through those mechanisms is probably the right way to do it, and you should have the right people from the health board as part of that as well. But yeah, no, it sounds great. Well done.
Great. Mark?
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Sean. Sean, just picking up on your point there. The over 50s sort of winter wellbeing idea came from our life stages and partnerships team. They do a walk. I think there's about 60 over 50 people now that attend every Thursday, and they are really proactive. It is, as you said then, an informal way to really interact and chat to our community, and they are always, I can pass details in terms of contact details. They are really interested in kind of, letting their, voice be heard and that kind of thing. So that is one way, that you can really talk to people about the things that are affecting their lives daily, and health, obviously, especially with the over 50s and early years, is a key element of that.
That's fine. I mean, that's really helpful to know in terms of how do you sort of have some of those broader conversations and engagements, and then how do you potentially use groups like that to spread messages more widely in their wider networks as well? Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Sean, and thanks, Mark. Adam?
Yeah, just to say, let's not silo those two particular areas either in terms of the children and young people and the over 50s. There's a great knowledge base and experience there with 50 plus that can bring a lot to the younger generation, and also the opposite way round, a lot of energy and we've seen through a number of studies now, certainly in health, to do with mental health and agility and ability of how children can keep older people young. So again, if we could look at that multi-generational cross-cutting, especially again within that work stream, age well and live well, bring the two together. So look at how we can bring it, and that'd be a great project that I think the PSB would fully support. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Adam. Jennifer?
Thank you. Yes, listening to that conversation, it just got me thinking about, Mark, what you weren't able to, I suppose, bring to the table today because of the time that you've got. But it's actually that lived experience, and there'll be a number of different issues that won't necessarily sit, necessarily just in one place. And it feels like that richness is maybe a really important piece to capture in order to feed into some of the wider PSB work. You've referenced poverty. It's a huge issue. It's complex. It doesn't sit in one place. You've got pensioner poverty just as much as you've got childhood poverty. They're big issues that we're facing here. And so I suppose, without detracting from being the fun bit, which is the important bit that retains engagement, and to give people respite from maybe some of the challenges of their lives, it's how that maybe gets captured, and that how it can then be fed in to really provide insight that as a PSB, I guess, action can then, there are things that only a PSB maybe can take action on, was really where my thinking on that.
Thanks, Jennifer. And I've got Amanda.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mark, I thought the figures, and I was involved in the process and some of the panels, and it was really, really good, and some great delivery. Mark, I suppose my reflection on some of it, and the stats around the returned evaluations were really, really good, but the evaluations are incredibly important to us, aren't they, in terms of next steps, but also identifying what's really good, and also being able to support groups and organisations where maybe things haven't gone as well, but also ultimately being able to demonstrate our sort of value for money, as well as obviously the positive outcomes. So my only reflection really, and as I say, having been involved very positively in the process, is that we do need to have particular focus on getting full return of evaluations, and doing that in a supportive way, helping people to make those returns, because some of the little groups, would naturally struggle with some of that. So an offer of help from SCBS if we need to be doing any chasing or working with groups to help them to understand what they should be reporting.
Thanks, Amanda. Mark?
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, man. And that's a really good point. And I know I'm a bit of a data geek in terms of our team, and I do like evaluation and monitoring, because ultimately, especially in prevention and early intervention work, if you don't prove the impact that you have, then it's much more difficult to get funding. And we should be proving it. We should be proving how good our work is and the difference it's making to our communities' lives. But yeah, I entirely agree with the evaluation model being super important. And yeah, we emailed, we chased and phoned up all the groups, you know, to try and, where we can, support and get that monitoring in, and we will, you know, also keep doing that in future. But I know you said you were involved there, Amanda, but I think you were integral to the whole process, both for Summer of Fun and Winter of Wellbeing as SEVS, so it's always appreciated, so thank you.
Thank you, Mark. On behalf of the PSB, I think you'll find that there's significant interest across the partners and stakeholders today, and a clear mandate to engage with us via the Live Well, Age Well, which is a really good suggestion. Thank you to Adam for that. And thank you to you, Mark, and the team for all the excellent work, and long may it continue. We look forward to linking in with you. So thank you for that. Again, you're welcome if you want to stay for the rest of the meeting. But I'm going to move on now to agenda item 11, which is Roger Thomas, a verbal update on walking in our shoes. Over to you, Roger.
Thank you, Chair. Just note from the fire service, should be walking in our boots, really, but it's really an open offer. It was a conversation that Adam and myself had around perhaps trying to re-engage partners. We've had 2 years of this now, working sort of remotely, but perhaps an education piece in terms of what we are all able to offer, and particularly we're in the process now of developing for our new fire authority members. With a considerable churn. I know local authorities have had that in terms of new councillors coming in. So we've got a number of new councillors coming onto our fire authority, and a full education and training programme for them. And I just thought it was an opportunity really to, particularly on the community safety aspect, which obviously links to a lot of the work we do within the PSB, to perhaps an open invitation to one of our sites to run through to partners everything we do, everything we can offer. And I'm sure there'll be opportunities in there where people will see actually we can collaborate, we can work more effectively together in a sort of show and tell process. And I think that could be extended as well. You know, we've all got the challenges around net zero carbon 2030 as public bodies. And again, we're doing a lot of work with that. But a lot of that might be in isolation as well. So, you know, there may be themes that we could pick up on that would benefit a lot of our work programs moving forward. So that was it, really. It was just to get a feel if that was of value and people felt there was something we could do in that sphere. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Roger. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Roger. I think this is really integral. Certainly what we've done over the last 2 years about working together. We've worked brilliantly as PSB, as separate partners, but coming together. For me, it's also about lessons identified during the pandemic and how we're moving to new ways of working, and different skills and different abilities that people have got within organisations, and to see that in operation at each person's workplace. I think that's quite a powerful message to see. I've been fortunate enough to go to a couple of either businesses or organisations, and there's lots we can learn. And actually, you know, that collaboration, co-production, I think is massive. So very much welcome that. Sorry that I won't be here to be able to take part in that, unless you want to invite me back. But no, I think it's fantastic, and hopefully all partners will want to engage in that and show where we are now after 2 years of difficulty. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. And I can't see anybody else indicating. So before I move on, just to add my thanks, Roger, for raising this. I think it's a really good opportunity for the PSB, and I do fully support it. So thank you for that. So moving on then to agenda item 12, which is Human Rights City. And just to flag up, I might have to leave if we run over 4 o'clock, but I will be handing over the baton to Roger. So we've got Rian Miller, Lee Wenham, and welcome to Councillor Louise Gibbard, and we've got Adele Dunstan. So Louise, are you leading
Yeah, I
this?
think I'm going to lead. Unfortunately, Adele's just messaged me that her computer's forced itself to reboot, so she'll hopefully be joining us. And Rhian's also had to give apologies today. So I'm going to try and share my screen. I've got a short presentation just to update everybody really on the progress that we've been making with Human Rights City, and also just a bit of a plea of some things for you to take back to your organisations as well, as partners. So let me just I think is that visible now?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Right.
If you want to go to slideshow mode, lovely. Thank you, Louise.
There we go. Yeah, so very, and so Lee and if Adele come back on, if and Adam in fact has also been involved. If you want to jump in at any point, please do so. So a very brief overview of the commitment, which all the partners here have signed up to the pledge, which is very much about engaging our communities and those we serve in the realisation of their human rights. So about raising awareness, making human rights real for the people of Swansea, and making sure that they're able to talk about their rights and claim their rights where they feel that they're maybe not able to do so. And really importantly, building on the excellent work which is already taking place across the city around human rights and social justice, and making sure that we are, joining the dots, linking everything up together, and really showcasing some of the good stuff that already does exist. Making human rights the foundation of our service planning and delivery, so making sure that as a human rights city, it really is at the heart of everything that we do, and moving on from that, and it's fundamental to all our policies and our actions as individuals and as organisations and as a city. So very briefly then, our progress to date, which hopefully you're all aware of, is we had the formal sort of pledge signing on International Day of Human Rights last December. Since then, our steering group, which I chair, has been meeting monthly with representatives from all the PSB organisations, and also some citizen representation from the co-production network as well, which has been a really helpful input. We've done a huge amount of engagement with over 1,000 people reached, either through online sessions, in-person events, and the Human Rights City survey, which we circulated. So I've personally met either online or in person with our LGBTQ network, with representatives from asylum seekers and refugees groups, and also with schools as well. I've been out to several different schools, and then the survey went quite widely as well, which wanted to get that kind of baseline to find out what people understand about human rights at the moment, and what really are the priorities to them to inform what we do next. So the priorities then that came out of that survey, we asked people to sort of choose out of a list of kind of various subject areas, and there was an opportunity for people to fill in a blank box as well. But the things that came out then were tackling poverty, vulnerable children and families, tackling discrimination, domestic violence and abuse, and human rights awareness. So, those are all things which are already big priorities for us as a public services board, but they were the things that matter to our citizens too, so that's really good to see how that kind of marries up. I will say it's not come out as one of the top 5 from the general feedback, but in the meetings with our schools and young people, it very much environmental issues and sort of the right to a clean environment and the right to a carbon net zero future kind of thing also came out very strongly from the young people's work. And obviously we know that that's something that we take seriously as a council and in all of our organisations. So, and I think that can kind of weave through the other priorities as well. So although it hasn't popped up as one of the top 5 in the wider things, we really are conscious that that's something that really did matter as a right for young people as well. Is that? Oh, it seems to have stopped. I can't move on. Hang on, is that? Oh, there we are. Fantastic. So, what are we doing now? What's the sort of work that we're doing at the moment? So we're wanting to make our formal declaration now on the 10th of December, and so to kind of sum up the work that we've been doing so far and say yes, we think we are a human rights city. Obviously, it's never going to be something that we tick off and say done, that it's achieved and we leave it to one side. It's always going to be something that needs to be revisited and continually supported. But the sort of main things that we're doing at the moment is identifying programs, initiatives, events, things that our organisations are already doing that display a sort of human rights based approach or fit in with those 5 priorities. So again, you know, this is a plea really to, can you feed those kind of things through to us through the steering group or to Adele if I don't know, if I can't see if she's joined us yet, because we really want to kind of build up that picture of what's already happening and what gaps we need to fill. We're developing a communications plan now to launch these priorities to the public and to showcase those programs like we just talked about. Really raising human rights awareness amongst our key groups related to the priorities. So how can we talk about these things in a rights-based language sort of way? We've arranged for human rights training from the British Institute of Human Rights for all senior management in PSB organisations. So hopefully that's been circulated and you've signed up for some of those sessions. And then going back to all the groups and networks that we've already engaged with to tell them about what we've been doing and to get those discussions going around what those priorities actually mean, what can we do to support and to further those priorities, and what gaps need to be filled. So in Swansea Council, what we've asked our leadership team, and you know, this is very much something we'd really like to echo, to be mirrored in all the PSB organisations, everybody that signed the pledge, is that to do this identifying of what's existing programmes or what more could we be doing to support the priorities, really championing human rights from the top down, to make sure that we've got that human rights sort of culture in our organisations and that everyone is aware of our part that we're playing in becoming a human rights city. The training, as I've just mentioned, making sure that when new policies and things like that are developed, we always have an eye on human rights as we're doing that. And we've included human rights remit into the existing departmental equality reps working group. So and then those are kind of representatives of our staff right across the authority then. So it's very much about, as I say, kind of top down, but also a kind of bottom up. So we're making sure that it's filtering through, and we'd really love to see that being that kind of work being echoed in all of your organisations as well. Again, in terms of what we're doing as the council, we're leading on the comms plan. We're kind of we'll be getting that rolled out and shared with the steering committee. We're developing, I can't take any credit, Adele is developing a human rights in your pocket guide, which is going to be launched shortly. And again, that's very much a sort of little explanation of what rights are in sort of you know, citizen friendly language, and a bit more information about how to kind of find out more about that, how to claim your rights, and really making it kind of real and widespread and kind of creating that sort of awareness across the city. Again, like we said, the further engagement back to our networks and to kind of get more to really drill down what these priorities mean to people. And then working with Swansea University with Simon Hoffman, a sort of rights-based approach guide for all our organisations, really, you know, taking inspiration from the fantastic children's rights work that's been done and seeing how we can broaden that out to a more general human rights approach for all our organisations. So that in a nutshell is sort of what we've been doing. How do I stop sharing my screen now? Because I'm sorry, I don't do this very often. I usually get someone else to do the sharing bit. I don't. Oh, there we are. Has that gone now?
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate. I went super
you did
fast.
Fantastic for somebody that's not doing it very often. You did a very good job of that.
I know. I usually get someone else to do the screen for me. But I don't know if Adam or Lee or anyone wants to come in on that.
Yeah, I'm going to hand over the chair now to Roger, because clearly people will want to come in and people may have questions, and I don't want to interrupt the flow of that. So thank you, Louise, for the presentation, and thank you to PSB members, and my thanks again to Roger for taking on the chair. Thank you, Roger. It's over to you.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks very much indeed. Adam, your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of things. Thanks, Louise. It never does it justice in any presentation about how much work goes in behind the scenes, and it really has, and it's great to see that coming together. I think there's a couple of bits for me as an ask for the PSB. Really, is how do we as a PSB grasp this more than perhaps we have so far? It does feel a little more of a Swansea Council initiative than perhaps the PSB, and this, remember, did come from the PSB in terms of driving it forward. And I know there's lots of support out there, but I don't think we're recognising as well as we are in Swansea Council, what all our partners are doing. So a couple of suggestions really from me. That the first one is we'll come on to the performance framework and highlight reports shortly on the agenda, and I just think we ought to probably add something into there around how are we making an impact towards being a human rights city, so that we can capture it from each of the work streams and tie directly in with what we're doing there. And then I also wonder whether we ought to have a standing item on this agenda that is about human rights city, where we bring examples of good practice or shared learning, or where we can engage from each partner organisation to highlight the great work that's happening in each organisation, rather than just what we're doing. So just a couple of thoughts there. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adam. Louise, I don't know if you want to come back with any of those observations from Adam.
No, just yeah, I can entirely support that. I mean, to an extent, we are trying to do that kind of sharing good practice in the steering group, but to bring it here for a wider audience would be really helpful and useful as well. To to keep it on everyone's agendas and to make sure it is a priority for everybody, and that it's not something that's going to go away, and it is something we're carrying on with.
Great, thanks, Louise. And in terms, just go to Jennifer.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's actually sort of building on what Adam was just referencing there, because I was really interested in what's come up as the top priorities there. And I would, I don't need to be Einstein to work out that those are probably going to need to feature quite strongly, or will align very well with the PSB Wellbeing plan. And so, in terms of what's coming out of the wellbeing assessment. So actually, I wonder whether it will naturally dovetail into that future plan, in terms of if we're thinking about tackling poverty, which is, it's unfortunate that it's there, but it's right that it's there, very much near the top. Then I would envisage that the PSB, and so going back to your point, Adam, it's about not. Yes, there is something about what each individual organisation can do, and that's quite right. Sort of look to yourself first. But I guess this is about what is it to have a PSB, which is different than if there was no PSB. So I guess it's then what's the enhanced piece, especially when tackling something as complex as poverty that touches so many lives. What is it that only a PSB can do? And I suppose that might be the different piece. Maybe that's what's seen as wanting at the moment. Maybe that would be some of my reflections on that. Maybe.
Thanks, Jennifer. I don't know if Adam wants to come back.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. I absolutely agree. I think one of the things that we've grappled with as a PSB is what is that added value that we can bring over just a sum of organisations that meet together. And I think you're right. I think when we get onto the local wellbeing assessment, and then inevitably that will, the suggestion later will be to sort a group to come into the plan, the wellbeing plan. I think that's where all of it sort of comes together and knits together rather nicely in terms of the human rights city. There's a much wider remit than poverty, as you know, and it's how we tie all those bits together. And I think that's what we do. We're the glue at the PSB that brings that overarching principle in terms of direction of travel. And then we look to our work streams to then feed back from the wellbeing plan, the human rights city, city of sanctuary, and everything else that feeds down into what we're trying to deliver under the new wellbeing plan through the 4 work streams that we have under the PSB. So I absolutely agree. I think that's very important that we bring that all together.
Thanks, Adam. Louise, do you want to come back?
Yeah, just briefly, I'm just thinking on that. I mean, it would be interesting to see, wouldn't it, if we could develop the wellbeing plan in a sort of rights-based language kind of way. And so thinking about tackling poverty rather in a sort of people's right to a basic standard of living across Swansea, and and how each of our organisations and how the PSB as a whole can contribute to empowering people to have that right and to claim that right. So yes, about kind of how we marry the two will be quite interesting, and it'll be useful to some good discussions we can have there. And I think when it's sort of being formulated in that sort of language and those terms, it would be really helpful.
Thanks, Louise. I think it's timely in terms of cost of living increase at the moment and all the challenges we're seeing out there, particularly across Swansea. I'm just thinking in terms of some of the scrutiny we've been subjected to, I suppose, in terms of what the PSB and what the added value does give, and Jennifer's right in raising that. And it was one of the themes that was raised through the scrutiny of the work stream that I oversee. And there is an element of, would this have happened anyway? And I sense with the Human Rights City, I think that's something the PSB should be proud of. It has driven this work, and I think it's really good to see there's something we can hang a hat on to a degree. I'm just conscious in terms of it being for the public as well, and just how visible it is out there. I live in Swansea. I'm not aware of that being perhaps promoted as much. There's perhaps a little bit of work there in terms of the wider comms. And that might be something we can do, as a PSB to promote that work as well. But yeah, Adam, is that a legacy hand, or is that?
No, it's to come back if I may.
Yeah.
Just quickly, I guess it's just getting a sense of realism in terms of how we develop this moving forward. The wellbeing plan has a very short time in order to be developed, in order to get it in. So I just didn't want hairs to be running in terms of thinking that we've got a long time in order to get all this together. I think we may need to do it phased. We've got the wellbeing plan, we've got the new community strategy, we've got the prepared and contest strategies coming through, we've got the poverty strategy, we've got cost of living and the implications that we have from that. So lots of bits coming out there that I think are separate strands that we as a PSB probably need a separate meeting to bring all this together when they're all in line, and then find the best of all of them to knit them together. I think to try and knit it into the wellbeing plan may be just too great to ask in the time that we've got available. And I don't want to slow any of them up because they're all important individual documents. Our added value will be knitting that all together at the end of the process. I think, we're only talking a few months away. So probably perhaps the next meeting have that as a more key focus. And just your point at the end there, Roger, with regard to the comms, not only around this, I think there's a piece, we'll come on to later around engagement, public engagement at item 14, where that's exactly the sort of thing that we need to pick up more of in terms of how do we promote, how do we do the comms, how do we get that public engagement. Again, no public questions today, yet some really big issues that we're grappling with and talking about. So I think there's a definite piece there. We'll pick that up under item 14. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Lee?
Hi, thanks, Roger. Yeah, just to pick up on the comms for the human rights in particular. So we've developed a comms plan, which we've shared with our partners' comms teams. I think the leader, Rob Stewart, has got a meeting in the diary coming up very soon with a number of our key partners, some who are here today, brothers who signed up for the human rights. And I think he's just going to chat to them about how we kind of make the next 6 months really focused on human rights, and that would involve, much better comms. And one of the things coming out of that is we've developed a pocket guide on human rights, which we want to distribute across Swansea. And I think we're looking at maybe a mid-July launch of that, and that develop as a kind of kickstart or a re-kick of the human rights communication. So from that point, I would see communications ramping up a lot, not just from the council, but then from our partners within the human rights initiative. So hopefully you're going to see quite a bit of change on that. But I think the meeting with Rob and partners coming up is going to be vital for that, because it's meant to galvanize partners and say, right, come on, let's all work together now in the next 6 months, so that come December, we'll have confidence on being able to announce Swansea as a human rights city.
Thanks, Lee. That's very much, and obviously a lot of work going on in the background with that. Great, thank you. Okay, if there's no further questions, we move on. Big thanks to Rhian, Lee, Louise and Adele. Really important bit of work, and thanks for the update and the presentation, Louise. Okay, we're on to item number 13, which is the local wellbeing assessment update, and over to Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, everyone. I'll just take you quickly through the key parts of the report that's been circulated. Obviously, just to say that we have actually published the wellbeing assessment in just about in line with the statutory timescales. Very late in the day on the 5th of May itself, so that was good. But obviously, as we're now very much moving on to towards the wellbeing plan stage of this overall continuum that the assessment is obviously the first part of, and you know, this is probably where our focus has to go now, really. Just to quickly going back to the wellbeing assessment, although we have published it on the web page, we still have a few things to do to improve it as best we can, but that's mainly more in terms of presentation, navigation, that sort of thing. And this includes, you know, picking up on some of the detailed suggestions that we had from the actual consultation on the draft. We also have some annexes to finalise as well, so we're just working our way through them at the moment, and we will be adding these final versions to supersede the existing version as soon as we can. Just a quick update on the analysis commission, which I've mentioned in previous updates. Yeah, the work on this by Swansea University has been a little bit delayed, but we've now picked it up again. It's in fact we had a meeting on this this morning, involving our assessment editorial group and our contact at the university. So there was a bit of discussion there about the best way forward, but I think we've come to an agreement on a way to go now to basically try and finalise that as a piece of work, which you know was intended as a chapter within the assessment. So it'll appear in the final version, or maybe as a slightly detached annex. We haven't quite. I suppose that decision will come later on, but yeah. So that piece of work is moving on, and we're hoping that will be finalised in the next 2 weeks. So obviously, as mentioned, we are now moving into the wellbeing plan stage, required by May 2023, which sounds a long time away, but it really isn't, because the activities and timescales building up to that are very prescriptive, and there's some quite lengthy consultation periods within that. So on that page of my report, there's a sort of indicative outline table of what the key steps are. So as you can see, there are certain things starting in June and July. So it does feel like we're already sort of in a bit of a race, you know, to move this on as best as we can, as soon as we can. Obviously, there's other parts to that as well. You know, we have to instigate a 14-week consultation period with the Future Generations Commissioner's Office on draft objectives. So that's one of the things that we have to do very soon. We also have to produce a wellbeing statement early in the process as well, which is set out there. And obviously, you know, through all this work, we have to sort of demonstrate how the emerging objectives link to matters mentioned in the wellbeing assessment. Again, showing that sort of continuity or continuum between the two pieces of work, which are closely linked, although separate exercises. They're on the same continuum. So that, yeah, that the guidance makes that very clear. And the key thing I pulled out there is that the objectives should reflect, most importantly, where collective action can have a positive impact on well-being, rather than perhaps the business as usual, or what one organisation tends to do on its own. So it's looking for that aspect really in terms of developing the objectives, I'd say. So how do we move it forward? Well, obviously we have developed the assessment through an editorial group to sort of bring that to its conclusion. And obviously, looking back over how this was all tackled around 5 years ago, there was a former planning group which sort of steered it at officer level across the organisations, and we're looking to perhaps to sort of evolve the editorial group that came with the assessment to sort of work through the detail of the requirements at a sort of a more operational level. But obviously, the key thing is that this wouldn't be a strategic group. And ultimately, the plan has to be owned and led by the board at the senior level before it goes into the public consultation stage. So that's something that, you know, subject to the views of this meeting, you know, we're going to take away and work up some more concrete detail about. So that's about as conscious of time. One difficulty I know we might have is in terms of the it's the joint committee cycles and meeting dates that we might have a bit of a challenge in how to develop and, you know, the objectives, not just, you know, at a wider level. So I think that's something we're wrestling with at the moment as to how best to do that, because obviously the dates for the joint committees are relatively set. So that's about as much as just a whistle top tour really through the report. Happy to take any queries or comments, and I'll answer as best I can.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for listening. Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. Thanks, Steve, for the work that you've put into this, because I know it's been an uphill task in order to get it delivered and to actually get it on there or thereabouts. The date for the wellbeing assessment was no easy feat, so thanks for that. I just really wanted to draw attention to page 20 of the report, which is the timeline that Steve talked about with regard to how do we move this forward into the wellbeing plan. And we talked about the wellbeing plan and previously in the previous item. What we do know is that in order to get to the wellbeing assessment part of this, that formal planning group and editorial group worked well into once it got underway in order to bring all that together. And that's really the recommendation, is to have those groups again to be able to drive this forward and make sure it hits the timeline. Steve's picked up again that issue with regard to the joint committee meeting. So the suggestion would be that the priorities which are pulled directly from the assessment again goes through that formal planning group, editorial group, and then is recommended to the joint committee via email. And then we have that discussion via email. Getting a meeting between July and August with holidays, getting true representation and so on from all partners to get to one meeting is just about impossible, which is why we tend not to have a PSB meeting during that period. So the recommendation would be that we do that through email. Each organisation again puts forward their strategic and operational leads in order to be able to shape and get those all together. And then this is purely in order to get to the point where we can then draft a wellbeing plan that goes out for that long-term consultation, as Steve mentioned. Although May 23rd sounds a long time away, it really isn't when you've got consultations and so on. So that'd be the recommendation to the joint committee.
Great, thanks, Adam. Martin.
I'm not sure if my hand was up. I think Jennifer was before me, maybe, Rog, but
yeah, sorry, I'm struggling to see the screen from you. You're right there, Jennifer.
All right. That's
Jennifer
all right,
first,
Martin,
then
you go for
Martin.
it while you've got bandwidth.
not a lot of it, I tell you. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Steve, for bringing this to us, because we certainly need to get going on this, don't we? Good work done by the editorial group to bring us to this stage, and we definitely need to reconfigure and set up a group to take the work forward on our behalf from now on and bring that work back to us fairly rapidly. I think we've lost a bit of ground. We are behind the curve, I think. I've already seen the wellbeing objectives of the draft wellbeing. Some in fact have been approved of other PSBs in the wellbeing plans. So we need to get motoring on this, definitely. And in terms of the committee, our joint committee cycle, we probably need to work around you to a degree there. I don't know, and the editorial group, because I think we need a dedicated meeting fairly early on, probably to consider some of the earlier output or proposals or considerations, because I'm sure that we as a committee don't want to get bounced into, not having enough time to consider the objectives and consider the shape and content of the wellbeing plan itself, because that isn't a lot of time between now and May. So I'd support the setting up of that group. Yeah, there was one, paragraph 4.6. Can you just clear this up for me? Because it suggests in there that I can see your timetable in your little table there on 4.5 about the 14-week advisory period that's recommended by the Commissioner's Office, and then the drafting of the plan, the wellbeing objectives in July. But paragraph 4.6 suggests that we shouldn't go near drafting wellbeing objectives until we've had that 14-week advisory period. Am I reading that right? Because that would concern me if we couldn't, get stuck into drafting the objectives for, another 3 months or something. Or 2 months.
My understanding, Martin, is that we provided a draft of our objectives to the Commissioner's Office for that 14-week period. So that was, perhaps it's not as clear in the paragraph as it should be, but yeah, that's my understanding, but I would probably need to go away and check that for sure.
Can we clear that up, please? Because that seems to be fundamental to me. But
yeah,
we're working on the basis that we do need to start drafting those and consider that work and that related work from Swansea University as well, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll clear that up.
Thanks, Martin. I'll bring Jennifer in.
That was quite timely that I went after you, Martin, because actually your point there about maybe the dedicated meeting early doors, I think is particularly helpful, because it goes back to something that you were saying earlier, Adam, in the previous item, where you were quite rightly flagging the number of other elements that are in play. So it's not just the wellbeing plan that we're trying to pull together as individual organisations or as partnerships and collectives. But I guess where my thinking was at on that is that actually the wellbeing plan could be that overarching piece, potentially not. But actually that early doors of actually sort of almost landing on and setting the direction would maybe make sure that it's heading in the right direction early doors. So I think that's a little bit, Martin, of what you were sort of saying, that the PSB could have that opportunity early doors based on what we've already got in front of us. So what are we calling out as being the headlines that we're going to go for? And then that maybe would fit well with maybe what other structures because you're quite right, Adam, there's, these timescales always look luxurious, but never are. And it is trying to get through those processes and they are quite cumbersome, but I suppose it's about therefore being able to get the PSB agreeing what are the priorities, what are the go-to areas that we're going to sign up for as a partnership, as opposed to individual organisations who may be playing in and out differentially on different other strategic agendas. But I was just wondering whether, given all the other things that were going on, whether they wouldn't actually it would be an opportunity to align it and thinking, how do we streamline and think about how the wellbeing piece can play into all the other agendas that we're playing in as well. That was my thinking on that.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'll bring Adam in.
Yeah, and I think that's the absolutely on the same page, I think, all of us. So the idea, my understanding, is that the formal planning group, the editorial group, brings all that together, because you have all the people on that body bring all that experience together of all the various different strategies, as well as the wellbeing assessment. That group then picks out all that information so that it is that overarching document, and they'll put that together and then present that back to us as a PSB. But rather than try and set up a meeting of the joint committee of the PSB, what we do is we do that bit via email. So there will be a formal meeting with representatives from each of your bodies on that working group in order to shape it and pull all those other strategy links in together into one document that then becomes the PSB's ownership document to lead forward, taking into account all the other that I mentioned earlier. So that's the recommendation, is that we do meet, but we don't meet as a joint committee. We let the officers from our various organisations get on and get under the skin of this to make sure that they pull all of that out from each of those strategies, and then it comes back to us for that overarching.
Do you want to come back here, Jennifer?
Yeah, I suppose it was for me to understand that then is, so if we were taking the example of, say, tackling poverty, which we talked about earlier, would the individuals therefore in that forum that you're describing be in a position to actually make some of those maybe bolder or sort of take, so what you're saying is the decisions would come back, but whether they're cited, would they be cited enough to be able to bring the sort of the commitment at that strategic level for the organisations of how we would address that as a system? I suppose it's just understanding the level at which people would be feeling able to offer up solutions that maybe the PSB would be the ones who would be able to be bold enough to say that's a direction we can commit to.
If I can just come back on that one, Roger, that's your call really. Who in your organisation would you field? And that's what the ask will be back on this, is who in your organisation will be able to bring all that, or multiple people that you would want to field to make sure all those elements are picked up. And that was the issue that we had at the start of the wellbeing assessment, was identifying the right people that could bring those right skill sets to the table. And then we ended up with multiple people coming through. So for example, in ours, we would have Steve, we'd have Richard Rowlands, who are our strategy people, and they would pull in people like Anthony, who you met earlier, or Jane Whitmore, and so on, in order to give that extra advice as and when needed. So it's about you providing the resources, your sector, your organisation, to come to this meeting armed and ready with that sort of information, and then it pulls together for us as that overview to make sure that it has all been brought together. The danger is we create an industry where we have lots of meetings with lots of people, and it'll take us until May in order to just have initial meetings. So it's about how do we streamline this to make it work, and that is commitment of each organisation to put that strategy level person forward in order to be able to deliver.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Martin, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, sir. Yeah, it was in Jennifer's vein really, because I understand, Adam, that the group needs to go and do the consideration for us and do all that analysis and pull it together. But at the same point, I think that we as a committee need to start feeling and seeing and experiencing what those new objectives might start to look like based on the evidence that's coming through from the assessment. So I agree we don't need to twin track or parallel run these things, but at the same time, my initial kind of meeting thing was around us just getting an early sighter so we could just have a discussion around the table. And I would recommend face-to-face. I'd be really happy to come into anywhere in Swansea anyway to meet you all and just have a discussion about how that feels for us at the minute, what we think of the assessment currently. And just offer maybe back to that practitioners group any form of steer, so that it's off on a tangent. I'm not suggesting that we would, because I'm really comfortable with those who are involved in the process from my side and from the other organisations actually. But that's what I was more thinking of really, that we get an early sighter of roughly where we think it needs to go, because we all know what's happening around human rights, poverty, climate change, nature emergency, the financial position that people find themselves in and everything. So I think we've probably got enough knowledge based on the assessment to give that steer. I don't know, it's just the way I feel about it at the minute, but perhaps others don't know that, I don't know.
Adam, do you want to come back on it?
Yeah, thanks. I'm more than happy if people want to meet. I just don't like meetings for the meeting's sake, but if joint committee feel there is, it's making sure that you have that commitment in order to be able to attend that meeting, because it'll have to take place sort of in the next probably 4 or so weeks. And so long as people are willing to move diaries and make sure that they are available and have the right people available, what we saw at the start of the wellbeing assessment was that lots of people were sent or just didn't turn up, and it took us a long time to get off the ground. So long as I've got that commitment from everybody around this table that they will free up diaries in order to make that available, then great, let's have a meeting. That was the only reason I was suggesting do it via email in terms of those, in order to just free up time so that people could respond. But if people are willing to make that true commitment, happy for the team to organise an in-face meeting.
Great, thanks, Adam. I can't see any more hands. So yeah, I think there is a consensus, and I would tend to agree with that in terms of, I think we need to learn something from the last time we went through this process. We were probably quite ambitious in the planning stage, what we put forward. And I think some of the things we tried to deliver in and around that were called through the scrutiny panel. And we found we probably overpromised in a lot of areas. So getting it right at this stage, I think, is important, and that we have that sort of sense of ownership in terms of what we are going to seek to achieve over the next few years. So yeah, I'd be an advocate for a single item, a single agenda item meeting, and like I say, we all have to commit to that, as Adam says. That's the challenge, is getting everybody together in that short time scale. But you know, I'll certainly do what I can. I can see other partners who've asked for that. We'll try and facilitate that over the next 4 to 5 weeks. So yeah, that's an action on all of us, really, statutory partners and other partners as well. It's really important we get that full representation in that meeting. So. Okay.
Roger, just to add to that, if I may, just to say it needs to be then the person at that right level. This isn't something that can be passed down to, you know, just one of the operatives so that you've got a representative there. It needs to be that strategic person that can pull all those together, or multiple people, so that we get best buy-in and we can do it all in that one meeting. What we don't want to be doing is delaying it and having to come back again and again and again. We don't have that time.
Absolutely, make sure the minute captures that in terms of not only strategic partners here, but also those with delegated authority as well to take that work forward. Yeah, okay. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, just in terms of the report, there are 2 recommendations on it. The first one is to note the report, which I feel we've done, and the assessment. And the second is obviously to approve the setting up of the Wellbeing Plan Group, which we've done now. I don't sense any dissension, just a little bit about the mechanics of that as well. And just leaves me to thank Steve for pulling this together, and yeah, really challenging in terms of timescales. And the next stage is equally challenging, but yeah, a big thanks on behalf of this group, Steve. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, moving on. Item 14 is with you, Adam. Strategy, ideas, suggestions around public engagement and promotion of the PSB and to raise awareness.
Brilliant, thanks. As often with the PSB, we're running massively out of time in terms of the scheduled agenda time. So I'll try and keep this brief. It was an item that was knocked on from a previous meeting, you may recall, in terms of we're just not getting the buy-in. And I kind of introduced this a little bit earlier in terms of, again, no public questions today, no public, as far as I can see, that have dialed in to view this. And we just need to find a way, really, of engaging better with public and our residents in order to get more interest. Again, a couple of recommendations rather than just coming with the problem. One is that we could add comms opportunities to the priorities within the framework of the performance frameworks that we have, where we put in there things that are coming up in the next period, how we could improve that by getting more comms out and engaging more with each of the work streams. So do it via the work streams, and also add a comms onto this agenda item on our regular agenda that highlight comms from the meeting that we can either do some sort of press release or some push. It's after the event, but it might be something that we can look to push through social media or press releases in order to at least get out there and start stimulating, saying, what have we done, what have we achieved? You know, Human Rights City, Summer of Fun. You think about, you know, what we did with the presentations earlier. There's lots of great info there, and I think we're just not capitalizing it. So maybe an agenda item that says, what could we push more readily through a comms stream? So they're just a couple to go with. Happy to take any others, or again can defer for a perhaps a more substantive meeting when we haven't got as many presentations. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adam. I can't see any hands. It is, and I think it's probably across all our organisations, it's sometimes quite challenging to get public representation at meetings. I'll speak, in terms of the fire authority, unless you're as you're pushing through something quite negative, i.e. closing a station or trying to do something radical, then we tend not to get a lot of feedback. Sian, you're probably the standout there. Instead of that, health do get a lot of engagement through the public, but I think that's probably around your remit and the pressures of the weather. But I think that is a feature certainly of public sector organisations. We see that through our consultation on corporate plan and that sort of thing. We really struggle to get the people engaged unless there is like I say, a local issue or something that is a burning agenda item or whatever. So, but that's not the reason not to do it. And I think you're right. If you were to ask Joe or Joanna Public in terms of what the Public Services Board does, I think we probably wouldn't get a lot of feedback there. So, Sian?
Yeah, I mean, I have just put a little comment in the sidebar to say that I think it would be a good idea to do something. I suppose just to say from a health board perspective, we are really strengthening our comms and engagement function, and we've done very little proactive engagement, I would say. We're very responsive, probably, as you say, Roger, to when things go badly. So, but actually, I think we are putting in place arrangements to strengthen those arrangements. So I think there is more that we could do and more that we could potentially offer in that space as well in the forthcoming months.
Great, thank you, Sian. Okay, so we will, like I say, I think it'll be a standing agenda item in terms of that engagement issue going forward, and something we need to probably reflect and consider moving forward, particularly as we move through the planning process. There will be obviously a consultation as part of that, but as we shape that and get some feedback within that process. Okay, we're on to number 15. It's the performance framework and highlight reports from the 4 work streams. I don't have any real lead on this. I'm assuming it's going to be the 4 work streams, or just there for any comments or observations, really. Adam?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think so this is the first iteration of these performance framework highlight reports. Came out of scrutiny. We were already looking at how we could improve our performance. What I would welcome is any feedback from these reports, where when you've obviously had a look through them, maybe not today, but if you could feedback anything missing, anything you think could be more helpful, anything that's not clear, just so that we can improve this as we go. We'll add that bit around communication into there as well, and something around Human Rights City and the links, as we mentioned on the one of the previous items. These are just for noting. Again, a suggestion would be that perhaps halfway through the year, we have the work streams come to do an overview presentation of what's been achieved and what is going to be achieved, so that there is a check-in with each of the work stream leads going forward, just so that, again, we are cited, not in the detail, but that strategic direction of where they're going. So just a suggestion to the joint committee.
Great, thanks, Adam. I can't see any hands, so that's for everybody to reflect and have a look through the reports to see if there's any glaring omissions or anything you want to pick up on. But yeah, it goes back to that scrutiny piece, really, in terms of us providing qualitative and quantitative feedback that we can show milestones and feedback to see what has actually been achieved as a result of the PSB. So, okay. We'll move on. The future partnership forums ideas and arrangements. I don't know who wants to speak to this. Adam again. It's the Adam Hill show.
I think it's just me. It's my last one, so I wanted to get everything in one go. You see, that's all it was. This is just, look, we met, I think it was the Human Rights City actually, that was one of the focus and equality for the last Partnership Forum ideas, looking for more of a focus. I know some will come out of the wellbeing assessment, and that'll give us a bit more of an aim and as we develop the plan. But if there is anything from partners that you feel is something that the PSB really needs to get under the skin of, that we could have that partnership. So the Partnership Forum, as you recall, is our wider membership of the PSB across all sectors, public, private and third sector. And just really what we want to do, we want to get a program together so there is regular engagement now that we're getting back into this normality of a world that we live in. We want those ideas. So if you could forward those through in probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks so that we could put a program together, that would be superb. So any suggestions now, gratefully received, but happy for you to take back to your organisations and then feed them through.
Great, thanks, Adam. Okay, the next few papers then are for information, so we'll go through them very quickly. If there's anything by exception anybody wants to raise, the first one's around the funding. We've or Western Bay region funding for Public Services Board. You will see on page 53, it's not a great deal of money. But at least it's something which supports an element of admin to support the PSB. That's the first one. I think Leanne is the project manager for that in terms of just securing the information back to Welsh Government in terms of how the grant has been spent. The second one, we talked about scrutiny quite detail. So number 18 is around the scrutiny letter. And again, no reason, just for us to note the letter. There's no reason to or requirement for us to respond to that. I feel we have certainly within our reporting framework now address some of those issues. We'll see to what extent when we go back in front of the scrutiny committees in terms of whether they're happy with the progress we've made, but it's certainly in the right direction. And it has been quite helpful actually to have that sort of objective feedback. So again, I'm going through these. Please stop me if anybody wants to raise any particular issues. Safer Swansea partnership. I'd probably look to Adam or Trudy really. Is anything by exception you want to raise on this? No, Adam, I can't see anybody indicating. Okay, just again for information. And finally, oh no, so last but one, letter from Neath Talbot, and that's from Edward Latham in and around the Thriving at Work, which I think is planned for. Let me have a look. I'm pretty sure I've seen an email regarding that event coming out shortly.
Yeah, sorry, Roger, if I just come into that, interrupt you there. It's planned for the 14th of July.
That's great. Yeah, 40. I knew I'd seen something recently. So yeah, again, as much as we could do to support that, will be really welcomed as well. It's in collaboration with Swansea University, and again, another opportunity for us to share with Neath Talbot partners as well. Great. Okay, and then on pages 87 to 115, the feedback on the wellbeing assessment from Future Gens Commissioner. Again, I won't go through that in detail. The summary on page 87 does give a lot of sort of positive feedback in terms of the direction of travel from Swansea PSB, which is really encouraging as well. But unless anybody's got anything by exception, we'll take that again as an information paper. Okay, and then on item 22, which is a final one on our agenda today, is a future work programme, which we always try and identify what things may come up in the future. I don't see any owners on these, but Critical Incident Group obviously has looked at a number of cross-cutting themes across Swansea and Neath Talbot. So it's I'm guessing looking at Adam really in terms of lessons learned identified. Is that a sort of has it been a structured debrief as a part of that, or is that what's going to come out of this group?
Yeah, so the critical incident group was the one that was based on the high street. So we closed it down previously with regard to you remember it was the worst high street and then became the best high street. in Britain, and got finalised into the final for the best high street in Britain. So real turnaround, and it was just about the lessons learned. There was a lot of partnership engagement there, some great work with the third sector. There's a lot of work that's happened up at Dafati in terms of the shop units that were taken over and turned into community space. So lots of lessons identified there that we should be able to take into other projects. So it's just a wrap up really, from closing it down to what have we learned and what did we identify. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thanks, Adam. I'm assuming Paul will lead on that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you. Healthy cities.
Yeah, sorry, Roger. I was approached by Sharon Miller, Health Board, to she would like to see that item placed on the agenda.
Okay, I'm assuming for the next meeting then, is that right? We'll bring something back for the next meeting? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you. And then finally, childcare and play sufficiency assessments. We look forward to a presentation on that in due course. Okay, I don't have any other business. We don't tend to recommend that that's down. We've got a very full programme here now. So our next meeting is Thursday, 11th of August, 3 p.m. And again, I don't know whether it's going to be another hybrid one or we're going to try and host it in person, but we'll send out those arrangements in due course. Adam.
Yeah, just this is my last meeting. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone. Yeah, not always seen eye to eye over the last 4 years, but one thing we've always done is work in partnership to the best ends that we can possibly get to. I've seen the PSB grow. I've seen the partnership grow. And we've done some really good work in those 4 years, and that can only happen with everybody sat around the table, banging the same drum and driving in the same direction. So it just for me to thank everyone for your help, support, both in the 4 years and especially during COVID. We did some amazing work. So just a thank you and good luck for the future.
Thanks, Adam. Can I just say on behalf of, I'm going to bring in Martin first.
You're going to do it for me, I think, Roger. But I do want to thank Adam personally for the energy and drive he's brought to the PSB work, and as a really good colleague, actually. I think he'd be sorely missed in Swansea. Best of luck in your future role, Adam. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, I was just going to echo that in terms of the contribution you've given to this board has been significant over the last 4 years. I've just checked where Mansfield Town are. They're in League Two, so you're certainly not going there for the football, Adam. But
it's always rugby. Only rugby with me.
So yeah, just to say on behalf of all of us, like you say, you've brought a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, very positive. Your knowledge in and around local authority work and how that impacts on other agencies and partners has been, exceptional. And yeah, a big thank you. We're really sorry to see you go, but we wish you well in the future. And please don't be a stranger.
Great, thank you all. And at least the meetings will be shorter without me in them.
Amen to that. Okay, thanks very much indeed. Diolch yn fawr i chi gyd. Thank you, and we will all catch up soon.
Thanks, Roger. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.